Welcome to Making Awesome Chapter 16. This is it. The last one of 2020. We have been teasing it for weeks, for freaking weeks. We finally have Chris Tanner in the flesh, patent attorney extraordinaire. Let's get down to it. But before we do, let's hit the billing department real quick. As always, this episode is supported by 3D Musketeers. You can find us at 3dmusketeers.com. All the links will be down below. Speaking of links down below, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you got a couple of things you want to plug, so let's do it, man.
All right. I want everybody to know how much of the intellectual property system is accessible to them without any attorney. Any attorney. And my YouTube channel, youtube.tannerpatent.com, shows how to file a patent yourself without an attorney. Shows playlists on how to file for trademark yourself without an attorney. youtube.tannerpatent.com. I'm done.
And I want everybody listening to just understand the gold mine he just gave you. He's got a whole YouTube series about how not to spend 10 grand on a patent. This is a patent attorney telling you this. Chris, why do you do this? Why do you give this away?
Because people find out what a headache it is and that it's a 2 Monster Energy drink and about a 5-hour investment. Never mind to write the patent, just to file. And they realize kind of somewhere through that process, I am not enjoying this at all. I don't really want to do this. But I would rather establish rapport, Grant, and also trust. And when the audience trusts me, they may file their own at first and then come back to me later and says, I did not enjoy that process at all. And I decided that from now on, I'm going to pay somebody. But in some cases, I lose the business. They say, Chris, I went around you. Thank you. I probably won't ever need you again, but nice to meet you. Well, at least I have the trust and the respectability, but that seldom happens. More is when people see the intimidating nature of the U.S. Patent Office, government interface, the trademark office, the copyright office. They say this is very poorly architected and not entirely logical. I don't want to do this.
Sounds about right.
It seems like the government in general.
Yeah.
And the
Website was probably made
USPTO
in
is
the 90s.
the USPTO is one of the worst offenders for this. They will deny patents for reasons that don't make any valid sense. They'll approve patents for reasons that don't make any valid sense. Patents that are not novel, unique, or non-obvious, but they'll do it. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about your history. Tell us about, Tanner Patent. Tell us a little bit about that. I want our viewers and listeners to know not only you as a person, but you as a professional.
Well, I was a semiconductor physicist for IBM for several years in the 80s and then chunking into a little bit of the 90s. And then I went to law school, got a law degree from University of Florida, and then I went and worked as an examiner at the U.S. Patent Office. Hey, Grant, real quick, though, the viewers of the podcast at the bottom or somewhere, they'll be able to see the link to the YouTube channel, youtube.tannerpatent.com.
Absolutely.
And they'll be able to see my website,
They'll see
YouTube.
everything.
All right, they'll be able to see tannerpatent.com, my website. And the reason is, Grant, I might email these to you later and have them have you put this in. There are 4 movies about the patent system that are really good that illustrate some of what you just said. They're free. They're available on YouTube. And one of them is called, it's by Austin Meyer. And, you know what? I need to send these to you later. But there are more resources about the patent system available that I find entertaining, interesting, and express it in a dramatic way that's better than I can do. And I wanted to make sure to get those to you. Grant, remind me to send you an email with the 4 movies.
Absolutely.
All right, so back to me and what you wanted me to tell the audience. I think that comes close to a lot. I'm a former patent examiner and also an inventor myself, former semiconductor guy, electronics guy, and some of my clients need that. But the point I was going to make was I've been inside the patent office and I know what the examiner is going to do and the constraints and pressure the examiner's under. Now, what I'll also do, though, is it's a higher likelihood if you come to my law office that you'll end up getting a patent, although it may not be a very useful patent. And I try to avoid that. But it happens, guys, doggone it. Anyway, in a lot of cases, when my inventors run out of money and the company's not doing real well, they at least have the satisfaction that, well, I came out of it with an actual issue patent. Sometimes there's kind of a peaceful, easy feeling about doing that, that solves the wound of having lost money on something they really cared about. Because here's my big, hard negative hit. Not against my law practice, but just against being a maker and trying to be profitable with an invention. Approximately 90 to 95% of my clients lose every cent they put in. It's just too
common.
hard for an independent inventor to bring an invention to market, get the attention of the right audience, either licensees or potential buyers through your own e-commerce platforms and whatnot. And I have really bright level of inventors that are just having nightmares with e-commerce problems. Also branding problems, Thomas. Wrong brands, improper brands, poorly chosen brands, having to get the brand taken away. I hate to say it, this is an awful track record, but it's true. 90 to 95% of my clients lose every cent they put in.
But that's not just your clients. That's
that's everyone.
That's inventors in general. It's like they say, 90% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years. December 31st will be 5 years for 3D Musketeers. We're going to make it. And damn it, if 2020 didn't kill us,
Nothing can.
someone better bring a big gun, because it's going to take a lot to take us down. And it is unfortunate because so many people that had great ideas failed for reasons that could very much be theirs. But a lot of people failed for reasons that are beyond their own thing. And if they're wondering about, wait a minute, branding, what the actual hell is branding? Well, you're in luck. We have 3 episodes on branding. The first one where Thomas comes on as a guest and basically tells us our branding sucks. The second episode, Thomas shows us why our branding sucks. And the third episode, he brings us cool, new branding. None of this old and busted, but new hotness. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you will see our new logo, one of 3 that Thomas made. I'll bring the second one. The third one is stuck to the Lulzbot Taz 6, and I didn't get another one. But
From the samples.
3 different logos that we can use in 3 different places. And he took our colors from 15 down to 5, 4, 5, 5.
Yeah, I think 5 on the multicolor logo, but otherwise, typically, it should be like 3 or 1.
And that's a big deal. You look at some of the big brands out there. You can look at Coca-Cola's logo and know that it's Coca-Cola. You can look at Apple's logo and know that it's Apple. And we mentioned this in the branding episode. Go look at Apple's first logo and tell me that branding doesn't matter. Their first logo was terrible.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up. I think this, like, if we talk about branding really briefly in the scope of inventors failing to get their inventions going to market or getting in front of the right people, a lot of the times you'll see, people who have a higher success rate of getting those investors or getting those people that want to now buy their product and, take that themselves to market because they have the capital for it, just outright shark it. Those people already have developed branding for that product.
Yep.
They're already going into these meetings because they spent the money and were willing to spend the money on branding. And branding's not the only thing that inventors have to be willing to spend money on to take something to market. And I think that's one of the things that's really hard pill to swallow for getting a product to market.
Is it often, Chris, that inventors that come to you are trying to bring the product to market themselves, or is the vast majority of them looking to, and I hate it because I think Shark Tank gives a very poor representation of what it's like to do inventing, but are they looking for like that Mr. Wonderful deal where they're getting some cash up front and royalty in perpetuity, or are they looking for like a Damon John deal where they're just looking to get bought out, nice big chunk of money in a private island in the middle of BFE? What is most common here? Or are these people that are just lost and they're just trying to find some source of guidance inside of the patent system?
I'd love to have the BFE Island grant.
Who doesn't?
But the vast majority of my clients, I tell them, you need to actually show sales and show some user-generated comments and some content for, I would say, a year and 4 months, a year and a half or so. Move 20 units a month if it's an expensive item, or move 400 units a month for a more household consumer item on Amazon at $19 a pop or something. but you got to sell units for about, I would say, a year and a half or so before that big entity, Draymond John or Lori Greiner, whose book is outstanding, whose book about participating in the innovation process. You got to sell some yourself. Otherwise, Draymond John or Lori won't really accept your word alone on that it's got market cachet. They want to see actual customer verifiable interest. And most inventors that come to me, unfortunately, Grant, they have not established that. They're hoping that they won't fall on them to establish that. And when they find out that it does, they often give up right there.
And so what you're telling me, and from what I'm hearing, and of course I've heard you talk more than once, and it's why I have fallen in love with your passion. Because when I first met you, you were touting the website fireyourpatentattorney.com. Because you say, do you need a patent? No, you need sales. Talk to us about that, because so many inventors are like patent, and they want to dump $5 to $7 grand in it to have a patent attorney do all the work for them, or more. Honestly, 5 to 7 is a pretty cheap patent, but they have no sales, no prototype, no marketing, no brand, but they have a patent. And why do you? Where does this come from? Where do you believe that a patent starts to actually freaking matter? When should an inventor be looking to get a patent?
Well, when it's clear that the invention is going to move reasonably well and there's going to be significant commerce, and you don't always know that ahead of time. So that's why I encourage them to file their own. But here, Grant and Thomas too, I finally had to give up on fireyourpatentattorney.com because I couldn't get any traffic to it. It's odd. I made it part of my brand, Thomas. I told everybody, look, I want you to fire me. I want to be fired, and I want you to go forward and do what's important and actually make money and bring cash flow and revenue and get on Amazon, and potentially have product liability insurance and all the necessary things. Arguably, I'd love to see you do really well where I don't make a dime. But part of that is because business has been very good to me, and I've had actually a pretty lucrative amount of connections. And I frankly don't do this because I need the money. That's not why I do this. I do it because I really enjoy it. But unfortunately, Grant, in about 2016 or so, they asked me to renew that site, and I saw that I was getting maybe 10 visits a year. And I just said, you know what? I'm not getting my word out at all. First of all, I'm not getting fired. But second of all, Grant, thank you for remembering that cool brand. I couldn't sell it. I couldn't get anybody to pay attention.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
I bring it back. No other patent attorney wants it.
It's well, the thing about right now, especially, and I mean, ever since even before 2010, we're living in a storm of media that exists online, and to be able to cut through that nightmare, those turbulent areas, the mediascape is what we've been referring it to, is increasingly more difficult every minute you go by, letting more stuff go on to it. And so a lot what I've done with Grant and what I suggest to people is, again, you have to put money into research, and you need to know who you're targeting, because if you're just throwing stuff out and expecting people to look at it, it just doesn't work anymore. We have to have things that are saying I know exactly the person I want to look at this, and I have tags to identify them, and that's who this ad is going to, which will get 10% return or less on people, but you still get those advertisements rolling, and it does eventually convert to sales and things. But it's a really hard time to have any kind of online presence. It takes a lot of work and a lot of honestly a lot of people sometimes too.
It's true. It takes a lot of people.
Yeah, it's not
the
easy.
Right people,
it's really
too.
hard. Yeah,
The
and
right
a little
people.
luck too. A little pinch of fairy dust doesn't hurt.
No, never has.
And to follow Thomas, just to let you know, the majority of the referrals I'm getting are not coming from online. And I keep my online more as an encyclopedia and a way for those few interested users to have a resource where I develop trust. But I gotta say that, yeah, if I depended on online to live and eat, I would have a lot of trouble because my YouTube channel, the one about filing your own patent without an attorney, that gets about 10 views a year. I don't seem to know how to get people to come to it and care. I would think, okay, hey, I just showed you how to eliminate a major expense in your process. I do everything I can like I'm doing now. And nobody watches the videos. So
It's
obviously I'm not effective. But go
See,
ahead.
we're gonna help you get
Yeah.
this out there, man. We're gonna help you with
Yeah.
this, okay?
Well, it's I mean, speaking, even being someone who works, very intertwined with this industry of marketing, especially online, which is where a lot of the time is where I operate. My business personally, when I do work for clients, typically does not come from online either. My website doesn't make conversions into business for me. It's usually referrals from people I've worked with. The website is there so I can send it to clients and they can see a catalog of, work and all things like that. But yeah, if I relied on my website to let me live, eat and sleep in a bed, then I would not be doing that. I'd be in San Francisco in a cardboard box.
I gotcha.
That's a reference that nobody listening or watching right now is going to get because we were not recording when we were talking.
It's still kind of funny though. It's still
I mean,
a little
that's-
funny.
People know that joke though, Shaq
Yeah,
in
it's
San
out there.
Francisco for $1 million.
Yeah.
and that's fair. So, the big thing with with patenting in general is it's cumbersome, it's time consuming, it can be expensive. So why do you believe that inventors look at it as their only option to proceed forward? Some of them don't understand the provisional side of things, and they don't understand how a provisional can be useful to them. So I'd like you to talk about that. But before you get there, why do you believe that this whole industry of inventing has gotten to, if I don't have a patent, my product is useless? Why do you think this has occurred?
Well, we
Is it
go
Shark
back.
Tank?
It would surprise me because we look at the empirical data on the Shark Tank conversions where an actual deal gets closed and a check gets written. In a lot of cases, those are for unprotected inventions or inventions that are more like fashion or some kind of what you might say computer product that doesn't lend itself well to patents anyway. But Shark Tank is an extremely misleading and entertainment-only vehicle as opposed to accurate business relationships. Grant, I'm going to say that in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Carter timeframe, a patent really had a much more visceral effect on a potential licensee and a customer base. Now, with the internet and other e-commerce mechanisms, it's easy to find products that suit you, whatever you need, a garden hose or spades or garden equipment or new bicycle spokes. And nobody cares if it's patented or not. And it could be built by a garage inventor. But I also a little bit blame Grant, finishing this long filibuster, Ralph Waldo Emerson in his 1912 quote, "If you build a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door." Unfortunately, that, along with films like Flash of Genius with Greg Kinnear, caused people to think that without a patent, I'm going to get trampled. Or Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it's just not true. But I've given up trying to overcome it, Grant. I tell them 4 times, look, you don't really need to do this. This isn't where your focus should be. And they say, I like you, Chris. Where do I write the check?
And then you got them.
I like you, Chris. We like you, Chris.
Thanks.
We don't really have any checks to write, but hey, we're gonna give you a really cool platform to talk to people about right when we start to market it. So, close enough.
Close it up, meaning I should finish? Or
No, close
Oh, close-
enough.
close enough.
Oh,
God,
okay.
no, dude,
Yeah.
we are 20 minutes into this. Let's go.
All right, so Grant, you've run into this, me and you at tbic.us, a nice organization, wonderful human beings in Tampa, Hillsborough County area, where the people, as soon as I go to those meetings, I get swarmed.
Yep.
And people just love talking to me and hearing anything I have to say. And they say, I really feel like I should file on this. And then I'll go out and find my market space and all that, forgetting, first of all, Grant, that they have a 1-year grace period in the United States before they're required to file anything. At which point after that 1 year, their prior disclosures can and will be used against them in a court of law. But it's an opportunity for them to take advantage of that year. And I can't seem to talk people into doing that either. They want to do a patent. And unfortunately, there's a stigma or a psychosis or some kind of weird association between patents and commercial success. That's utterly false and spurious, and I can prove it. But unfortunately, I don't seem to be able to overcome the general cosmology and psychosis that, patented, patent pending.
Exactly.
I mean,
high likelihood of commercial success. Let's do it.
I mean,
So-
I think it's a survivorship bias.
It
They
is.
see the people who are successful tend to have patents, and so they see it as like a prerequisite when it's not.
I mean, Tad,
people
I think a great
Go ahead.
example of this for us was the nail curing station that we did. They had a patent well before they had anything, and their patent was beautiful. It was well written, but the drawings inside of their patents weren't.
It didn't end
not-
up looking anything like what we
Yeah.
had to make for them.
It wasn't possible
That's
to
bad.
be made on a budget, and they needed
Yeah.
it to be made on a budget that could be viably done. And that brought a lot of tension for us because we know as product developers, we're just instantly violating their own patent because what they did, they filed it before they had any sales, they had any research, or
They
anything
didn't
like
even have
that.
a prototype yet.
They had nothing. And I'll
Wish
give
I
them
had heard
credit.
that.
It's a really vague patent. So people might be able to get around it on the design side, but on the utility side, they've got it locked down. But on the they had two patents. They had their design and the utility patent because if you're going to go balls to the wall, freaking do it. But that one in particular still kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I felt bad. A patent attorney who had no desire to tell them any of this took their money, gave them a fancy piece of paper they can hang on the wall that for all intents and purposes is not worth the paper it's printed on. And that's a huge problem. So we've got this thing called provisional patents. What is that all about? We've talked about it a little bit on the show, but I want to hear it from the horse's mouth, as they say. What is a provisional patent? Why do I want one if I want to be protected?
Well, because it still entitles you to the same key two words, patent pending, as a utility does, but it has a lot of restrictions on the drawing format, on the scope and the language within the disclosure. It doesn't have to have something known as patent claims, legally boundaries. And so the advantages of a provisional patent are enormous, and I wish every single one of my inventors would do that. There can be some disadvantages if you go to European and international patent system, if you take too long from the provisional to the international filing date. But in general, Grant, a provisional means that you can take your business plan, or you can take digital photographs with any camera. I happen to have one sitting here, that anything that records it, and you can take color photographs and maybe add lines to them and details and explanation, or maybe not. And you could submit those photographs as part of your patent disclosure. You cannot do that with a utility patent, and that's a big constraint right there. Often, the digital photographs are a more accurate and more reliable representation than the drawings.
Absolutely.
But as an examiner and as a patent litigator, and I've litigated patents in federal court, unfortunately, and this is especially bad for software, mobile apps, things like that, you must render all art, all drawings, representations into black and white of a certain line width, which really takes away a lot from the core of the invention. But if you would also file the provisional, you can now cite back to what you really look like and potentially make it a lot harder to litigate against you. There's several other advantages, Grant, but to keep the sentences short and not wear out your audience,
No, man, let's do it. If
Well-
they're still with us, they want to hear this. If they don't want to hear patent attorney talk, they would have clicked away by now. It's been 25 minutes. They would have clicked away by now. The people that are here want to hear someone who has trudged through the mud say this. They want to hear it. So please go. You know, this
Well,
is why we want you here, because out of all the people that we talk to, I find our conversations to be very enlightening and very honest. That's the one thing I truly, truly appreciate that I don't find often in attorneys, period. But Chris, you are honest a lot of times, like you said, to a fault. You will tell people how to do this themselves, deliberately taking yourself out of the market, because at the end of the day, you are dedicated to helping people make awesome, which is why you are a perfect guest for the final episode in 2020 of Making Awesome. This is just interesting to us because literally today, I had someone say, well, I have a poor man's patent. I sent myself a letter in certified mail. That's going to be enough to protect me, right? I'm like, oh, sweetheart.
No.
Chris,
No.
tell us all about the poor man's patent and how much of a crock of shit it is.
it is a crock, and it's an unfortunate thing that kind of evolved in the 40s and 50s after World War II. More you'll see that with copyright, but either way, if you could do the same thing for just giving the patent office $75 and mailing it to them, that would be hugely more beneficial to your chances of ever utilizing it or profiting from it. Just putting something in registered or certified mail and mailing it to yourself, it does show that you had possession of that at, let's say, okay, December 21st, 2020, which is when we're recording this.
Yep.
But you could do that easily by just emailing it to yourself and preserving the entire file header too. And that's free, you know, so this poor man's, heck, you want to really go poor man, you can do it for free. But the admissibility in court and the ability to ever assert that and get commercial benefit from it is bad. It's really low because you never exploited it and commercialized it yourself. So even if someone else does it, they'll say, look, you had a chance to commercialize it and you didn't. Therefore, you're not able to reach the thresholds for statutory damages. So the problem with doing it that way is, in the end, it doesn't really do you any good. It could prevent someone from saying, you stole that from me, meaning the person who mailed the thing to themselves. But that's not, there's so many other ways you could make that same defense. But I hear about it all the time. These people don't realize that an actual patent pending application is only $75. They probably think it's more like 10 grand or so, which is a fee I run into a lot. And by the way, I've been doing this 23 years total with all office actions and everything. I've never once charged 10 grand for a patent. It's never gotten above that. $9,500 here and there, but quite often it's in the range of 8 grand over 3 years. Yeah. But so just to let you know that they hear, well, it's 10 grand. I could never afford that. Well, you don't need to. You only need to spend $75. Grant work. I got to get a little off the subject with you guys, though. I'm also involved in film and movie production, and I was at Sundance right before COVID hit, where you'll really see more of that utilization of that poor man mailing is people who think that they're gaming the copyright system on things like movie scripts, books, creative arts, and movie treatments. More
Listen
so
in,
than
Thomas.
And what they don't realize is if you go to copyright.gov, you can file your own copyright, which lasts for 95 years, plus life of the author, for $55. And I show that on my website too. And again, Thomas and Ted, I get 10 views a year. You know, I try to tell people, look, guys, here's how to do it yourself. I'm an attorney. You can't accuse me of unauthorized practicing law because I'm showing you how to do it, and I have the right to practice law. So it's a double opposite, but it's not a real entertaining thing to watch. And in general, people don't go. They don't watch it. They don't realize that you can be doing all this yourself.
The answers are right there for them.
And
terrible.
And that is a problem. The thing is, though, and I think that we miss this point. If you have an issue spending $8 grand over 3 years to get a patent, you should not get a patent, because the patent is only good if you can defend it. And if you have an issue spending $8 grand over 3 years, just try to defend it. It's gonna, just getting an attorney to go to court with you is gonna run you 8 to 10 grand on a retainer minimum. And good attorneys cost way more than that.
Well, now especially patent litigation, Grant.
Yeah.
Grant, it's more like, I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name. It's more like 75 to 100 grand for it to even be allowed in the office.
Yeah.
If you go to Morgan and Morgan, so see, because patent litigation is really expensive, we all want to avoid that. And just to let you know, for you guys, client, and for making awesome clients and making awesome people, how we want to use your patent filings is, first of all, just get them filed for, let's say, $4,000, $4,500, and then hopefully within 2 years, because it's going to be about 2 years before there's an office action. Hopefully in those 2 years, you get a licensee or you get some kind of outside investor who they take it over from that point.
And then it's no longer your problem.
That's right, and they may let it go, or they may file other ones, like with your nail dryer. What that person might have considered doing would have been to file a continuation in part. But more my point was that what we want to use patents for in my clientele and my client base is as a shield, not a sword, as a defensive weapon to make yourself more enticing and attractive to a potential licensee or investor. But if it comes down to actually having to fight it out in court, Grant, I don't have any people with that level of income that could afford to patent litigate. Not one.
Bingo.
I do not have one client. So I can't really allow them to go along that path. Well, I hope if someone tries to cheat me out of it, I'm going to sue them. Well, no, ma'am. I don't think that this is the right attitude you should have for what patents are good for.
It's not the hill to die on, is it?
Yeah, it really isn't.
Because they will die. Financially, it will kill you. It will. Unless you have an investor that's going to front upwards of millions of dollars to fight it, you will see your end in court.
You will come to an end where you cannot afford to make the continued filings. Here's another number I give most of my clients, Grant, and also the people at tbic.us, and maybe some of Tad's clients or Thomas's clients. I say 42 and 1. Probably to get an invention to market, either in bicycle spokes or some kind of eyeglass. I'll just hold these up here, or some kind of new pen. I got also a glasses case here. Get it on Amazon. You're probably going to need to spend potentially as much as 40 grand on tooling and machinery and cost, molds.
That can
Probably
be cheap.
going to be 2 years before you, and 3D Musketeer type printing. Probably 2 years before you see any money back, and probably a 1% chance that you will see any money. So 42 and 1. I tell people that. They say, yeah, I know my odds aren't good. I want to try it though. And I like those clients. I like that. Because they may get into it for 11 grand. They're into it for about a year and a half, and they realize I just put it on Amazon and I had 2 sales over 9 months. And someone else copied it. I can't afford to challenge them. I'm into this about 11 grand. Chris, it was nice to meet you. They shake my hand. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I lost 11 grand, but I really enjoyed the last year and a half.
They had a fun
and I'm
journey.
going to get out at an affordable level. I like that.
Yeah.
I've had that happen about 40 times, and I like those. But now a little negative side. I've had a couple of suicides, several divorces, a couple repossessed homes, and a number of bankruptcies too. And also, unfortunately, had to make a referral to the FBI on an individual who was going to take some other people down with him. Okay. Yeah, so inventors get too much.
It's not as clean as people think it is, man.
Yeah.
It could be a
But
dirty
it's like
industry.
anything else. There's an element of risk, and you can't sugarcoat that,
Wait, Ted, you're telling me if I take a second and third mortgage out of my house, I'm risking things? Wait, so if I'm refinancing my car to get money, I'm risking things? Maxing out credit cards is no big deal. I just cut it up and it goes away, right? I mean, that's how credit card debt works, right? No?
No, not really.
I know that. Believe me, I know that.
But
3D
we know
Musketeers
people
had
who
a lot of credit card debt that we paid dearly for. But now we're good.
So Thomas, Ted, you've known people, and I have too, but I've known a lot more of the ones that, the last year and a half, my son and I went to trade shows. We got to know each other better. This new bottle opener, we went to a consumer product show. We had a nice time. For about 11 grand, I feel like I made good use of that 11 grand. I kind of got a mini college education. Yeah, and some of that went to me. $5,000 of that went to me, maybe 4.5 or so. Sure. Those are kind of semi-happy stories.
Yeah.
True, they lost out, but if you look at it the right way, there can be an enjoyment level out of this too. And they scratched an itch and a trigger in their mind that they just could not seem to get rid of any other way. Sometimes they come back and do another invention, or sometimes not. That's about the end of it. But I needed to get that out there too, that there is a happy side to this. Even if you do lose, you didn't necessarily lose. You got
Right.
something out of it useful. And I'm filibustering here a little too much, but that's an emotional part of my experience. And I needed to let that out. I very seldom get a chance to talk to people about this because my profession is kind of dull. It's hard to make it interesting. But I noticed you laughed a minute ago, Ted. I have 2 monster movie scripts, both of them over 80 pages, about all the different inventor psychosis. But it's hard pitching movies about inventions.
I feel like that's going to be a horror movie. or a psychological thriller would probably be the right category for that.
Well, we'll talk about if any of you guys have any ways, Thomas, of helping me make it a little more commercially salient. But it's not a.
Well, you know what's really interesting, and I think this is a fun tangent, so I'm going to take it there. But what people have actually been doing, my professor, or one of my former professors when I was in school, was actually he illustrated a ton of. He's illustrated like all of the Goosebumps cover, which were those really cool. Popular like books in the 90s of like maybe early 2000s more
90s.
Like
90s,
kids
yeah.
horror like books and stuff. Yeah, so he did all the covers and character design for that, and then he also has worked on a ton of Star Wars comic books, doing all the art for that. And he says a lot of his clients are people who have written screenplays or scripts for film. And more recently, people who are going to produce, like producers for film and everything that will actually take it into the hands of the right people, have been less looking at blank scripts with good names and have started looking more at comic book versions, or at least pieces of an entire script illustrated out as though it would look in film. And those have been going way better for people.
That translates the concept a lot easier than staring at a stack of paper.
Well, it's a really fascinating thing when you start to think about how many comic books have been recently adapted to film and how successful they've been, and even comic books being adapted to TV shows and Netflix shows. I mean, you can almost find any successful film and say, oh my God, that started with someone who wrote a good comic book, which is just a crazy thing that's happening. And so now all these people who are doing screenplays are commissioning illustrators to illustrate pieces of their screenplay to then sell it to producers, which is just a crazy cool thing that's been a shift in the industry recently. So that'd be my
thought. Nice thought, Thomas. Yeah,
it's an interesting, and you don't have to do, as far as I know, people don't do the whole thing because that would be a crazy investment.
You could do like an excerpt.
But having excerpts like that, and it looks cool too. And then, I mean, at the end of it, we were just talking about, you put money in and maybe you lost out in the end. I mean, then you came out with like the thing you wrote having images, like, well drawn piece. And that's just cool to me. Like, I would love that, I think. But
yeah, Thomas, I wouldn't actually mind talking to you about this after. We won't get into this necessarily on the podcast here, but I want to ask you about that. I'll get some contact information from you. And I'll also ask you about John Krakauer and the book he wrote about, I think it was Montana State or maybe University of Montana. Rape in Missoula, something like that. Murder in Missoula.
Yeah, that's I think that
University
that was
of Montana.
About using your U of M. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're Montana State. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. You're a little ways from Missoula too, I think, right?
Yeah, it's about God, what is it? Yeah, it's
2 hours.
It's ways. It's like 2 hours ish.
Yeah.
3.
Okay. Yeah, so there's another kind of happy ending, Grant, where someone, let's say they had an idea for a movie script, want to get it into the Sundance, and there's a whole literal dance around getting it in, and it's not always based on quality or merit. But if they had one of these production level comic books, they could at least get some kind of enjoyment and have it around. I would argue that would be more interesting to hand to their grandchildren than what I get, because they want to hand their grandchildren the patents. And the first thing the 7-year-old granddaughter says, "What am I supposed to do with this?"
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It is interesting how the patent has so much value beyond its actual cost to the maker, so to the person that filed it. But if you give it to literally anybody else in their life, it will not have the same impact. Now, unless you know how important a patent is, how difficult they are to obtain. Like when we were working with this nail curing client and they said, "Oh yeah, we have a patent." I'm like, "What? Really?
Yeah.
How?" And then I looked at him like, "Holy shit, they have a patent." And their patent covers some really awesome things. They're going to likely make a lot of money from that patent. I think the device that they have, probably not going to make a ton of money, but we talked about that in the beginning. That's part of what we're going to do. And this brings me into a perfect segue to talk about our upcoming class system that we are still in deciding the name. It's either the Making Awesome Academy or the Making Awesome Institute. I think we're leaning more toward Academy at this point. But this is part of what we're going to do, right? We're going to talk to people like humans, not like clients, not like family. We're going to talk to you like you're another person. We're going to give you our honest opinion. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to make you do a SWOT analysis regarding getting a patent. And if your SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, for those that don't know what a SWOT analysis is, if that doesn't come out clean, then you don't get a patent. If it comes out clean, get a provisional. And see, the big deal with the patent is if you do file it too early on, like so many people do, you have to get that continuation with the changes. You have to make modifications to it, and all of that costs money. You can keep filing provisionals over and over and over again for different aspects of it. There's nothing wrong about that. They will look at your most recent provisional, I believe, or the most full one in the event of litigation. Otherwise, they don't open provisionals, right? Provisionals are not touched unless there is litigation. Is that accurate?
And even if there is litigation, they'll probably be ignored. I have a section on my website that discusses that, Grant. It's called patent laddering. It's kind of like bond laddering, except patent laddering. And it's a nice strategy. I'm a little disappointed in your nail people, though, Tab and Grant. Because that means that they got to you 2.5 years after they had already hit in the inception of the nail product.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Which that's usually a bad sign. When I have any inventor anywhere who would spend 2.5 years and he still never produced or sold a unit, it's almost a certainty that he never will.
They came to us through an inventor that she runs her own classes that kind of help people with this. And their focus is heavily on protection, right? And we're all about protection, all right? 2 condoms, mother on speed dial style of protection. None of those are good for those listening. That is an AVE reference.
That is
Please
an AVE reference.
Please don't take that to heart. And the safety squints, those are fine. But people look at it and say, I just need protection. That's like putting on a condom when you're going out on a date. You're way too early here, right? You need keep it, right? Safely, not in a warm environment, but safely. And if and when the time comes, that's when you use it, but not a moment earlier. Because if you do this stuff too early, you start wasting resources. And similar to this nail curing client where, yes, their idea could have been possible, it would have cost obtuse amounts of money to get there. Like, we built their prototype for bill of materials was like $400 for one. I mean, if you did 1,000 of these, you could do it for half that. To do it based on their patent would have cost about $1,500 to $1,600, and there's not much of a way that we could have reduced that cost.
No, because it relied on way too many custom parts.
Yep.
There wasn't that much that was off the shelf.
The big thing that inventors look at and say, I need everything to be mine. We're going through that with an inventor right now. The more off-the-shelf components you can use, the more affordable your product can be to make. And that does not mean you're stealing. You can reinvent the wheel and patent it. because you're patenting either the design or the new way this wheel operates. You don't need a square tire to call it your own. You can make small changes and call it your own. You know, a current client, and I don't want to go too far into it, Tad, because it is not particularly a safe for work topic, but we have a client that is working on a product that initially was damn near identical to another product, like to the point where we reverse engineered another product for her, made a bunch of changes to it to make sure that she could get her patent, right? And make sure that, because she wanted all these different changes to it, she wanted it to be different. But then feature creep took over. And feature creep is something,
Yep.
and Chris, I know you can talk about feature creep.
Sure
So
thing.
do you mind talking to us a little bit about that and what that looks like from a patent standpoint? Because you go from a product that has one good use, one good feature that makes it a viable product to something that now has 1,900 different uses, 10,000 different extra products. What does that do to your patent?
Well, Grant, it could, be kind of a disadvantage, frankly. If 2 years ago, when you filed it, 2.5 years ago, you mentioned a feature for use with bicycle spokes, but then it also has a real nice usage for cleaning windows, and you didn't mention that at all. Probably the scope of your claim coverage will not extend to washing windows. So sure, go ahead and find what the commercial best selling point of your inventions are. But in terms of feature creep, where I see a problem for me is I get the patent disclosure finished and ready to file, and they say, "Oh, well, let's add some more doodads. Let's add a light bulb, and let's add this and that." It gets harder to get the thing filed in a timely way. But I think you mean feature creep in a different context, where contractually they came to you and said, three Musketeers building something, and I wanted to do X, Y, and Z. And you build that, and you got your currency and payments and everything, and then they say, "Oh, by the way, add D, F, G, and P, and Q, and do it for free as part of the original bid for X, Y, and Z."
Yeah,
I would
we
argue
don't.
that's harmful.
That happens. This particular case, it didn't. The client knew it was going to cost more from the beginning. She was ready, willing, and able to do it, and she's been really great about this. We have talked to her about the feature creep. She's aware of the issues, but, and I think we all have to agree on this, that the feature creep that she added is going to add a lot of value to their product, and that is the big deal.
It's not always the case, but it is
not
this time.
It's
Oh,
not.
good.
I mean, we're working with the golf club guys, Tad. The company's called Teleclub. We can talk about the company, but they worked with another product development company that took $7,000
Took them to the cleaners.
It took them to the cleaners and brought them a product that was gorgeous, but was so overbuilt, and so it was 45 or 50 individual parts. That is way too much for such a
reduced it to
simple
like
product.
7.
Yeah. And while, yes, our parts are, every one of them is a new mold, where their parts, they only needed like 20 molds because everything was symmetrical, we still took their part cost down. And
Yeah.
yes, we do have an issue where people will come to us and say, "Hey, this is what I want to do." We get it done. "Well, hey, can you do this?" If it's a really small change, we generally just eat it because it's not worth arguing over 50 or $100. It's just not. But in the grand scheme of things, if it's a really big thing, we say, "Okay, this is a new scope of work. This is a new project." Because it's continuing off of a previous build, it does not mean it is built onto the same thing. But yes, Chris, you're right. And this is a problem that we see with Inventors overall. They want the world, they want it for free, or they want you to pay for it, because clearly their idea is worth so much money that we as a product development company would want 5% of it to do all of the work for them.
Grant, it's and Chris, it's an interesting thing to talk about feature creep. Also, from a marketing standpoint on its own, because we see this pattern happening a lot with people who are trying to market themselves, particularly online. And it's, if you are not specific enough and you're trying to do too many things at once, you will not sell anything. you will completely flatline your business
Because it'll just confuse
because
things, right?
you are not specific enough. It's weird, but even if your product having added features makes it a better product and would make people want to buy it more, does not mean it will be seen more. And being seen is important. And people need to have something that does one thing really, really, really well. Minimum viable product. So they need that because as far as marketing goes, even if it has the extra features, you need to have something that stands alone so strongly and is unique enough that it will sell. Because otherwise, you trying to do too many things, you will start to crumble, before you've even began. Which
I'm hearing you, Thomas. I'm hearing you. Hey, Ted, I'm sorry, Grant, you asked me to talk about my perspective on feature creep, and I kind of went off on a little tangent.
No, no.
Are we okay on that issue now? Is it answered, or I don't know if I understood you.
I think it is, and
Okay, yeah.
this is something that plagues all inventors, and I think Thomas hit the nail on the head. They're trying to be everything for everybody, and at the end of the day, that is the wrong move. You want to be one thing for one group of people. If you can have a really defined target market, you can hit that target market properly with advertising, with marketing.
Yeah,
and
like we talked about earlier, and having that product reflect that as well. There are ways that you can take a product that has many features and then market it to one group of people that would have a high likelihood of using it, where it may serve many groups of people. But if your product starts in its development with the idea of it going to, already, I say do your market research before you do any product development, or you even, do it when you have your idea, get some market research done, because then you will know if you even have a market to sell to and that someone's already not doing it better. It's something that I've seen a lot.
Yeah. Well, one of the dangers with...
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I was just saying, of people coming in with an idea that they think is really great, and they've already done all this work on it, only to find out that they can't sell this product because there are too many other people out there either doing it, or it's going to be too expensive to be able to push it to the right people. So it's really valuable to put a little money into market research, to have someone do it or do it yourself really well, because it's not worth the pain down the line.
I was just going to say, from a mechanical perspective, one of the other dangers of trying to add too many things together to one product is that it does none of them well. And I see this often. By adding more things, you're compromising the other things that were already there. And then you just get, you want to have a juicer and an egg slicer and a waffle maker in one thing, but it's going to...
Well, Tad, how else am I going to get my vegetable juice, boil my eggs, and make my waffles all on the same plug? How? Tell me, damn it, how I'm going to do it. You can't. That means it needs to be done.
Gonna pop a breaker is what you're gonna do.
You're probably right.
I can tell you already.
Chris, what are some of the biggest struggles that you find in this industry of working with inventors? So what are some of the common pitfalls?
Well, one is they want to pay me after all the payments are due up front, and so that makes people uncomfortable. They don't like that. They're kind of like, why should I pay up front? And it's because I've been doing this a long time, and if you don't want to hire me, that's okay. But I don't want to do it partway through and then come and have to chase down my money. But another one, it's funny you should ask that, Grant, because Tomas just kind of jumped on it a little and teed it up nicely for me. The biggest problem I'm uncomfortable with, because it can result in bar complaints and people going to the Florida bar, the Kentucky bar, the DC bar, or the patent bar where I'm licensed and say this attorney ripped me off, is because if the invention doesn't do well, sometimes they'll hold it against the attorney himself. And Thomas, I just wanted to say, it's a tough sell. When someone comes, I saw some people come to Grant and they've come to me on different things, and I really want this because my daughter really enjoyed it. So I think other people, their daughters will enjoy it too.
So many times.
So Thomas, I could say to them, look, I'm glad you liked it, but we can't have you and your daughter be the target audience. And there's a specific inventor Grant knows. Anyway, Thomas,
No
what I was going to
names.
say
No
though,
names here.
right?
We don't want to get sued. No names.
Thomas, what the hard part though is if you say, look, I need you to do some market research, you may have really enjoyed this, let's say bicycle spoke wrench of some kind. Help fix your daughter's little bicycle. You may have really enjoyed it. I'm glad you welded together some things and made yourself a nice bicycle spoke repair. It helped your daughter. You and your daughter had a nice afternoon. That doesn't mean, however, that this is going to scale to any extent. But
Mm-hmm.
Thomas, when I tell them that and say, look, I'm a little uncomfortable with how much capital you're getting ready to risk on this, they don't like hearing that. That is
No.
really met like a punch in the stomach. And Thomas said, look, let's do some market research. How's the market for bicycle spokes overall? Let's look at keyword and amount of searches on Google's AdWord Finder, I think it's called keyword support or something like that. There's like one search every 2 years on bicycle spoke wrench. There's just not enough traffic to suggest that you're going to move 10,000 of these a month, sir. But Thomas, I can't sell that. I seem to have the exact wrong personality to convince people to do that because it's kind of like calling their baby ugly. And Grant, that's the harder part.
Man,
Harder part because I know I'm taking money from someone who, in the end, is kind of living a fanciful dream or throwing money away. And at the back end of the path, there's going to be anger and there might be a bar complaint. Yep. But I've told him 4 times. I got emails and I got certification and everything. I tried to send you to Thomas on your bicycle spoke or on your new coffee cup or eggs and waffles and protein and pickles or something. I tried. And now when you lose money, don't come crying to me. Somehow or another, that's one of the tougher parts of my job. And Thomas, you're right, but I can't sell it.
Yeah, it's it's interesting because I've worked with pretty big clients before where you need to be able to tell them that, because sometimes maybe it's not because the product is bad, but maybe it's because how they want it marketed is wrong or how they think it should be marketed is wrong. All those things that people who don't do your job think they know better than you, which seems to be everybody's job a lot of the time.
How often do you have situations where they've already reached a conclusion that you then have to talk them out of, right?
Oh, all the time. The thing is that is really hard, and I see it a lot too with people. But the way that I've recently been getting around it is to do and it doesn't always work, but give my goddamn best effort to say, hey, legitimately, go get market research done by people who know how to do it. I'll give you my people to do market research because the numbers will not lie. And that is all I can give you. And if you still want to go forward with it after that, then like you said, it's on them and it might lead to anger down the road, but they had the numbers to suggest, and we can do a pretty decent job at estimating how well a product might do based on purely just its function. And maybe we can do the market research to say that, oh my God, it's so new that there's no way it wouldn't sell. That's possible too. But a lot of the time we'll have pretty good insights, beforehand already. And even if you want to continue selling that product, at least we'll have the information to chart a path to sell a product that'll be more difficult to sell, right? At least we go in knowing that information, and at least you have the papers to give to people later to do that kind of work.
All right, Thomas. Now, how often have you had someone come to you that had some market research ready and said, I know this is kind of limited? For example, have you ever had someone come to you and say, I got an Excel spreadsheet full of stuff that I got from Keyword Planner showing that, okay, admittedly, there's only 5 to 10 searches a month on bicycle spoke wrench. I'd like to see if I could still get that audience, though. Do your clients know to have already done and looked at keyword planning and seeing the amount of searches on Google, on Amazon, etc.? Do they ever come armed with that before they reach you? I've had 2 this year, and I like it. I like it better when they come to me like that.
Even I didn't come prepared to that with Thomas, and I'm paying for it.
No,
I'm paying for it.
Most people don't. I educate them when they come to me, but continue, Chris. Yeah.
Well, have you ever found though that when they said, okay, I'm only showing 5 to 10 a month, that okay, how did I want to phrase it? If they, after that, seem like what you might call a more educated and armed consumer that's ready to spend money, um, have you ever been proven wrong that their market research turned out to be right and it was a truly sellable item? And you just kind of, from your point of view, it's like, I think you're going to have some real trouble making your costs back here. Has that one ever happened? Because I've had it happen a couple of times.
You know, for me personally, I haven't been working professionally long enough for it to happen yet, you know? So still waiting on that one. So, I mean, I hope. I like being proven wrong. Because at
It's
the
my
end of the
favorite thing
day,
in the
like
world.
I think
Yeah.
like I think you were saying this and you show this too, Chris, is like I do my job because I really love my job. And yes, it, you know, gets me to be able to buy groceries and have a roof over my head and everything. But also I like my job, and when I can help people make their businesses better and be part of their business in my little way, I want that to happen. And so if I'm wrong about their product being difficult to sell and it sells really well with the marketing that's done, super. I'm only happy about that. You know?
Thank you. Hey,
Yeah.
Grant, I'm going to, oh, I'm sorry, Thomas. I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to
Oh no,
finish
it's
up with Grant. Okay, Grant, I want to tell you guys all something. And this is important, and even for you clued up and pretty, knowledgeable and people wise and sophisticated in the area of inventions and marketing. There's a commonly misunderstood principle, and Grant, you alluded to it a little bit before. I just want you to hear this, and I want this on the show. It's known as the principle of exhaustion. Okay, Ted, let's say an inventor wants a combination of waffle iron and pickle straightener, or something else you said a minute ago. Waffle
Yeah.
iron, pickles, eggs, and also they want a Fitbit hooked up to it for I don't know why. And
Yeah.
okay, you
Just
say to
because.
them, all right, you've got your components. Okay. What they don't realize, and what you guys might not realize is, yeah, Fitbit's got literally more than 10,000 patents in the US patent database, either through them or through licensees, things like that.
Damn.
But under the principle of exhaustion, it's the same if you hook a phone to it too, and you got to worry about Qualcomm patents and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, under the principle of exhaustion, if you paid good, fair value for that Fitbit and then included it in your waffle iron toaster, 8-track player thing, you have the principle of exhaustion that you now can incorporate the Fitbit and all its functionality fairly and honestly in your invention without having to pay licensing or royalties to Fitbit because you paid for the purchase of the item, and then you are allowed to
Mm.
do whatever you want with it. It's known as the principle of exhaustion, of patent exhaustion. But as soon as I get talking about it, people get exhausted.
But then that lets you use off the shelf stuff.
Which is what
That-
we're trying to get our clients to do.
Exactly.
Don't reinvent the wheels and all that. If Fitbit's got one and it's an extra buck over
Then
your
duct tape that sucker on there.
Well, yeah, that's actually an awesome point. It's amazing how much crossover we've had with all these things today. I love it. But we have that in design all the time where, they tell you, like, with art and design, it's always, you don't have to create something entirely new every time. Like, we've been doing graphic design for over, 100 years plus, because it goes back so far. And we haven't been doing it all that time just so that we have to make up new things all the time. You can borrow and you can take things that have already been done, as long as you do it with the knowledge of what it is and why it was,
And referencing.
and ethically and referencing. But we've been doing this and building on all of our respective fields this long so that people now can make new stuff with the old stuff. There's no
Exactly.
reason to reinvent.
Well, it's even
That's the
like
whole point of
industrial
commerce.
machinery is like half OEM parts. It's not all bespoke.
See, what the problem is, Ted, and a little bit Thomas too, is let's say someone was making a new wrist wearable that did pulse ox and did maybe EKG and stuff, and then they took a Fitbit engine and they just put their name on it. Yeah, that is illegal and that is a patent violation.
Right.
But if they're putting a Fitbit in a waffle iron or an 8-track player, that's an entirely new and unanticipated use of the Fitbit. And as long as you pay full faith and value for that Fitbit, it's known as the patent exhaustion. Those patents cannot be asserted against you because you're using them in a context completely outside of the scope of the claims of the original Fitbit patents.
Well, and
So,
if you already paid Fitbit, they don't care, right?
They might,
Well,
because this is America and they can sue you for a good reason, bad
Or a
reason,
bad
or
reason.
no reason at all. And yeah,
or
it'll
if it
probably
got
get thrown
used,
out in court, but you'll be drained of capital before that ever happens.
and to answer Tad's question, if it got used in some kind of disparaging contest
Sure. That makes sense.
where it was harmful to the Fitbit brand, they could
Yeah.
injunct you. But if you paid, what you guys know what a Fitbit costs, like 190 bucks, something like that,
The
180
cheap
bucks.
ones,
Depending on the
yeah, the
model,
nicer ones
yeah.
can get up there.
All right, if
Yeah.
you paid the full 500 bucks for it, you can commercialize it any way as you want because you're using it as a component. Same as if you're building
Mhm.
a birdhouse and you bought those specialized wood screws. You're allowed to use them in any way you want. You don't have to worry about the patents on the wood screws. But among the more sophisticated of my inventors, this is a real hangup. And you guys mentioned it earlier, and I just wanted to say, try to step them around that. Say, hey, go do a Google search on the principle of patent exhaustion so that we don't have to completely redesign from the start these new parts for you and we can use more off-the-shelf stuff. And I think
Mhm.
that you'll have a persuasive argument. Maybe you argued around that lady anyway, Ted, but
I don't
you
think we
know,
ever mentioned it because I didn't know what it was called. I just know that it is in product development, it is the most common thing that you should be doing is looking at how you can utilize other people's work legally to make your own. Because there is no reason for you to remake an ESP32. There is no reason for you to reverse engineer an Arduino Mega 2560. There's no reason for you to do any of that because somebody else did the work for you. You can buy it. There's all this research out there surrounding it, and you can build a product off of that without having any issues regarding patents, copyrights, or trademarks as long as, like Chris said, you don't use it in a disparaging way. And that's kind of the key. You know, Chris, were you present when we had the Zorro bunches of balloons guy? And for anyone wondering,
Oh,
TBIC
here
is
we
the
go.
Tampa Bay Inventors Council. The Zorro bunches of balloons gentleman came on and talked to us about his patent litigation. Were you around when that happened?
I know the guy because I know the film, and I even can remember his name. It'll come to me in a minute. And that was a real unfortunate situation.
There's a
He
film
came
about
through
this guy?
Randy, right, Grant? This
Yeah.
came through Randy Landreneau, and he was
Yep.
part of the film called Invalidated. I can even remember his name. I've seen that film. It's a film about the patent system. I've seen that film literally 8 or 9 times, and I get something new out of it each time.
Josh Malone.
Yeah, Josh Malone, what an awful experience. Yeah, it had a happy ending, but boy, that's an example of our patent system really treating people crappy, really getting turned in the wrong direction. A real shame. Absolutely. So I know Josh Malone and I know about the Zorro. Why don't you go ahead with your examples, though, Grant?
It was just that he had every freaking right and had all the evidence to shut the other company down, this copier, right?
Yeah.
And the USPTO ultimately, after literally millions of dollars spent, said, well, it's going to hurt the competitor a lot if we force them to stop. So we're going to let them keep going. I think he got a little royalty out of it. But
Well,
that's
what
a
did he say?
huge problem. He got boned.
And part of that, Grant, unfortunately, boy, is this a good illustration of when a government takes steps, sometimes they overswing the club and it ends up hurting the innocent. The reason that the patent trial and appeal board got established was because it was so hard to litigate patent trolls and get them to have their patents taken away so they couldn't continue to do serial litigation and harm others. And patent trolls were a legitimate problem in 2009, 2010, 2011. So people lobbied Congress and said, we've got to have this patent trademark trial and appeal board. Okay, and they established it, but then those people started taking legitimate patents away from innocent, earnest competitors, such as Josh Malone. He got his patents taken away. He eventually got some of them back. But yeah, Grant, as I recall, he's into that $3 or $4 million. He had some outside funding help him, but the product got harmed and disparaged, and that knockoff really took a lot of business away from him.
Yep.
I don't think that story had a happy ending either.
Not
Grant,
really.
I don't know. Yeah, see, that's what I was afraid of. Doggone it. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah, you
Yes.
are.
And it's a real shame, but I wouldn't
$17
let
million.
Is
$17 million is
Of
what
lit-
he
Lord.
spent.
litigation costs.
17 freaking million. I want someone, whoever, if you are listening or watching this podcast right now, I want you to think about what $17 million means to you. To the vast majority of the United States, it means you will never have to work another day in your life. Your children will never have to work a day in their lives. Their grandchildren will never have to work a day in their lives. And if you invest it properly, nobody past you will ever have to work a day in their lives. This man spent $17 million defending
The balloon thing.
a real patent that he really owned from
Several
people that
patents.
were copying him.
5
And
for 6 pence. Yeah. Go
the
ahead.
USPTO and PTAB said,
Nah.
I guess. And that's, quite frankly, that's bullshit.
It's pretty fucked up.
And this is why we look at patents, we look at inventors and say, and Chris, I've heard you say it, do you actually need a patent? If you even have to ask yourself, do I need a patent? The answer is probably no. At least not right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Chris, you
Nice.
hit the nail on the head there.
Thank you.
Until you have sales, until you have a viable market where even if you're losing money every single sale, that you can prove that there are people out there that will buy your product, spending any amount of money on a real patent. Now, this does not include a provisional. Get your freaking provisionals now. And ladder them if you have to.
Do laddering.
But spending...
Being first to market is
It
more
is a big
important
deal.
often, right?
Well, it's not just being first to market, but it's being first to market with good marketing. You can be first to market and have crap marketing and it gets nowhere. Thomas
you
knows
just need
this.
the momentum.
Literally, we've been going through this problem with 3D Musketeers. We are one of the first to do this in Tampa Bay. The problem is very few people know we exist. And even worse, very few people know what we do. And when people don't know something, their first reaction is, it's not, I want to use this service. It's, well, how does it work? And so we as product developers spend more time talking about what we do and how we do it than we do actually
the
developing the damn
projects.
product. Chris, do you find
Yeah.
that problem as well, where people are just trying to learn how to do it more than they actually just want to use the service? Is that why you did these videos?
Partly, and also partly because I felt like it would engender trust among my audience. But sure, Grant, to answer your question, I will get people that will get part of the way with me, and then either ask for their money back or withdraw, because now that they see what the process looks like, they don't want to do it. And I would have preferred they knew that before they walked in my door. But oh boy, Grant, a little bit nastier though is once they're in with me and they've made that initial payment, hopefully I've educated them enough with my drawings and my stock diagrams that I give out to everybody that they darn better know. But I'm finding a couple now, a husband and wife couple, where it's pretty clear they didn't read anything I sent them. And they're asking questions that I've actually answered more than a year and a half ago. And so I hope I'm answering your question, Grant. I'm not sure I'm answering it, but I hope so.
No, you definitely are. And I think if you, the listeners out there, the watchers, the lurkers, if you leave this with one valuable piece of information, it is to understand when you need to get a patent and what time in the development stage. This is not to be messed with, right? Look, if you've got a bunch of money and you just want to get a patent, you can reach out to us at 3dmusketeers.com and we'll be happy to take that money from you. No problem. You can just write us a nice big check. That'd be great. Everyone will be happy, promise. And we'll make sure that we get you in touch with Chris Tanner here so that he can get you a patent. But realistically, if you're not putting your time and effort into this to do it accurately, consciously, and purposefully, you are going to not only waste your time and money, Chris's time and money, our time and money, but most importantly, the time and money that could go to making your product better. If you spend the time trying to protect, you don't actually work on moving this thing forward. Chris,
If an idea doesn't get executed on, then what good is it?
right.
Well stated.
We're going to have a class that, and I'm going to give away the title of this class. Your ideas are worthless. Unless you execute. Yeah, unless you execute. There will be a long pause, enough to piss you off, and then I say unless you execute, because that's true. Because an idea in $4.50 buys you a cup of coffee. But so does $4.50. It's the biggest issue that we see in TBIC and all of these inventor councils throughout the nation and the world. People come in here, think that they're going to get a Mr. Wonderful who's going to throw money at them for ideas that they can't prove actually work. And Chris, you and I, we've seen it plenty of times inside of TBIC where people have the same damn idea for 30 years, have had minimal to no sales. They are not willing to make any adjustments. Their marketing is terrible because they don't believe in modern advertising. And all they're going to do is continue to spin their wheels. And ultimately, that's going to dig their own grave. And so how can people avoid this pitfall, Chris? Because you see it all too often. How can people avoid the pitfall of making the wrong choices?
I'm going to start by saying know when to walk away, Grant. After, let's say, 2 or 3 years, I'm going to say bicycle spoke remover, the waffle iron with the Bluetooth embedded in it, and the 8-track player, that you talked to enough friends, you built one, you took it to a swap shop, you took it here or there, you made a little YouTube channel, you gave it 2 or 3 years, even maybe use some keyword analysis and tried to steer some traffic toward it. And if after that time, I like the number of 2.5 to 3 years, if after that time you've only sold 5 units, the marketplace is trying to tell you something and you need to listen. But Grant, I'm going to shift and kind of answer your question another way and bring Thomas in. It's on Amazon. Thomas, almost all of my clients, other than someone with like a nuclear submarine or something very defense oriented, I want every one of my clients and pretty much every one of whoever walks in the door at 3D Musketeers, other than like Chrysler or Auto Vendor or something like that, I want them on Amazon. Thomas, Grant, I want you to do a whole separate class just on Amazon and all the problems and kind of how Amazon is a very seller hostile marketplace. But Grant, Thomas, when I have a inventor that has an item that potentially could be of interest to a licensee, the things I tell them, how they will judge you is likely on your Amazon track record, not on your own e-commerce websites, and they may ask to see your tax returns. But the one key that really seems to rock their world is if it's trending pretty high on Amazon, and does your company say, here, hire us to help you with your profile, hire us to help you with your Amazon keywords, with your Amazon photographs, contrast, color quality, things like that. And if not, I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to be in that field, because it's fantastic and people need it and they don't realize it. Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, you need it. If you are selling on Amazon, and like we said earlier, the way that your product is going to be successful is showing that you've had transactions, showing that you have had real human beings purchasing your product, using your product, and then all importantly, giving it good reviews. And even if you get 10% of people reviewing your product, but you have good enough sales and those reviews are good, it looks great for you on Amazon. And the other thing is, you'll notice a lot of the time, anyone who shops on Amazon, you will get a lot of products that are either quickly made out of China, or they were made by bigger companies, but roughly put together to just sell them on Amazon rather than their own site. Like I was shopping for computer monitors not too long ago on Amazon,
Oh.
and the biggest problem, and I mean, this might be more of a me problem, but the design and the photos that they were showing me of all these computer monitors made me think that they were like third-rate knockoff monitors, even though they were brand name and they should have been on top of their game. And that's because they're not spending the money making the images on Amazon look good, but they're just putting together poor Photoshop
Just
jobs.
photoshopped all together.
And a lot of these monitors, I was not ready to buy them until I cross-referenced on other websites to make sure what I was getting was the real thing. Or I looked at the reviews to see that people were saying
They're taking an actual picture.
But
yeah,
that can be bullshit these days too. Amazon
I
has
know,
gotten
yeah.
to a point where, like, in some cases, upwards of 80% of the reviews on Amazon are fake. Amazon used to be the place that you would go and you say, "Oh, they only have 3.5 stars."
yeah.
Well, now Fake Spot and Review Meta are your friend.
Yep.
Because you
Well,
want
when it comes
to
down to
vet that kind of stuff.
making those you want your Amazon presence to be really good, and you also want your other presences to be really good as well. You know, like, where are you on Google? Do you have Google reviews? Is your product selling itself through Twitter and stuff? Because, you know, even if you don't really use the Twitter, or even if Twitter isn't your main thing and you don't like it, whatever, the fact that you have one legitimizes your product. It doesn't mean that it's like some fad that you have to follow, but it says that if someone looks up your product and sees that there's an active account trying to push the product on social media platforms that they use, it tells them that this is real and real people are selling the product, and I don't have to worry that it's going to come from somewhere that I don't trust.
Well, what I'd like you to guys kind of answer here, Thomas and Grant, is if someone comes to you and they seem savvy and they have sufficient funding that they really want to try to make it work and it has cachet, I kind of starting to get a little rough with some of my people, a little nasty and a little harsh, and saying, you can't afford not to be on Amazon. You have to be there. It's the gorilla. I'd love to see you do great e-commerce outside of it, but Amazon is the main game. That's the Olympics, and you've got to compete there. And I would argue either 3D Musketeers or the Thomas Corporation LLC or the Tanner, the non-law firm side of my invention practice. We need to tell people, all right, I know Amazon is a lot of work. It's 20 hours a week of management of keywords, management of images, management of comments and reviews. 20 hours a week. Somebody's got to do that. If you won't do it, hire Chris Tanner, hire Grant, hire Thomas. But if you're not there, you're losing money and you're ignoring the gorilla, and someone else will take it away from you.
Amazon puts millions of dollars into SEO, into advertising. Hell, if you have an Amazon Prime account and you watch anything on Amazon Prime Video, you're getting ads for Amazon. You're literally paying Amazon to give you ads for Amazon. Think about that. Just think about that.
It's circular.
And when you're searching, so I actually did the search for bike spoke tool to see what type of volume it's getting. It has gotten less than 10,000 searches this year. But when you search bike spoke tool on Google, the first link, Amazon. The first link is Amazon. And Chris is absolutely right. If you have a physical product, hell, if you even have a digital product, a book, for God's sake,
you can sell it on Amazon.
You can sell it on Amazon. It costs you very little other than your time. Please make sure you read in your Amazon business profile what the commissions are. Be very careful. It's why you will not see us selling 3D printed parts on Amazon. Amazon takes a 40% cut, or they used to, on 3D printed parts. I am not giving 40% to be on Amazon. They can go to hell. And besides, we're not a B2C company anyways. That was back when we were trying to be clearly going the shotgun method, trying to get every ounce of flesh that we could. And that was not the right move. You want to be the one shot, one kill kind of business. You want to know your target. You want to sight them in. And when you have the shot, you take it. And a lot of times, Amazon is a great way to get out there. To give you a great example, we work with a company that does a lot of 3D printers. Like they're a 3D printer manufacturing company. And they sent out an email blast saying, hey, our product is finally on Amazon. Do you guys mind giving us a review? Well, no, I've had a great experience with their products. I'll go ahead and give them a review. Amazon held every one of those reviews because those were people that did not buy the product through Amazon. Amazon is getting better, but they're not as good as they used to be because people have found ways around the system. So yes, you need to be on Amazon and you need to get people to buy it. But don't be the person that buys like 60 of your own item so that you can make your own reviews. Because 1, that's scummy. 2, fairly certain that's illegal. And if not, it's definitely unethical.
Violation of Amazon terms of service, that's for sure.
Oh, I'm sure it does. But that's not going to stop people from doing it. I mean, just today, I got a product from Amazon. I bought RGB LED lights to go across the shelves so I can light up the printers and to do dumb stuff.
Of course you did.
I'm like,
it'll look great.
It's a great, thank you. And then I can tune the color temperature so, my marketing team doesn't say, wow, these photos suck for lighting.
They haven't been that bad. They've been good.
But
they've been good.
I bought it based on the photos because that's all there was. There were some user photos and it looked like exactly what I was looking for. The product comes in, it's like 1/3 the density of LEDs that I was expecting. So is it an RGB LED strip? Yes. But it's going to output about 1/3 of the light that I'm expecting it to. So it's actually going to be going back because it did not live up to any of the expectations. And so the big thing on Amazon is make sure that when you're doing your pictures, when you're doing all of your copy, that's your verbiage, your text, that it all falls and keeps it very clean. Because if customers are even 1% dissatisfied, they will not hesitate to tell Amazon, take it back. We don't.
Now, are you, Grant, then, and Thomas, I see you being work with consumers. Well, Thomas, I don't know your customer base real well, so I shouldn't assume this. But with Grant, I know some of his customer base. I would argue if they say, I don't have time to be on Amazon, I would say you don't have time not to hire us to do it, maybe at a lower billing rate. Are you willing to do that? Or because now you have access to their Amazon account profile and their bank account numbers too for their e-commerce and whatnot.
We are willing to help them. And that's actually part of why Thomas is on the team. So Thomas does work with us. He is he's an independent contractor. I can't say he's an employee because that is not true. Thomas is an independent contractor. I would love nothing more than to take our marketing team. So that's Thomas, Emma, Trevor, take Tad, move the 4 of you down to Florida. We create our own 3D printing lab. We just buy a home and turn it into a lab, and we just turn it into an inventor's paradise. But unfortunately, COVID is a bit of a bitch. And while we are going to survive this year, like I've said before, it's still going to be a little tough. So that dream is not yet going to happen. We're not going to have our own, like they have the influencer homes in Hollywood. Yeah, I want one of those, but for product developers. Because one, that just sounds like it'd be a ton of fun for no valid reason. And then 2, it's a marketing expense. So I get to write off a really obtuse marketing expense. But yes.
And are you suggesting that we get a TikTok? Is that what you're telling me?
Under no circumstances will we ever get a TikTok because TikTok is not an ITAR registered business. And we don't do business
for good reason
with businesses like TikTok because it's nothing but a way of data mining. And if you are on TikTok saying, well, they're not looking at me, you're right. They don't care about you. They care about what's going on in your background. They care about the fact that they have access to your phone GPS data. Because if you are not paying for something, you, my friend, are the product. See, this is the big deal. This is why Amazon is the way it is. Amazon won't charge you to list things, but they're going to take their pound of flesh whether or not your product stays. If you return your product, you don't get your money back from Amazon. They will give you your portion of your money back because Amazon did their job. They shipped it out, and then they also took the return. So if you are going to support a small business on Amazon, and I think small businesses should, and especially inventors, they need to identify themselves because that would make sense to me, right? If I can go on to Amazon even if I got to pay a little bit more money to buy from like a veteran-owned or a USA-owned business, you're damn right I'm going to do it every day of the week. Now, I will tell you this, Chris, because this has upset me. And I think I raged about it on our last podcast. And I laugh because we actually talked about, was it the Flash of Genius?
Mm-hmm.
The movie?
I was going to say.
We literally talked about it on the last episode.
And then you name dropped it. I'm like, oh, I know that.
Tad and I were both laughing because I thought it was about the seatbelt. It's not. It's about intermittent wipers. But it's still a really good story about inventing and what it is. But
it is.
We had someone call us that was looking to repair a broken part. She was complaining about how it's too expensive to get made. She doesn't want to support Chinese companies. There's no way to get it. To go over to China would be too expensive, so she wants to support an American company. So we give her a quote of like $150. That is for a full reverse engineer of a broken product, 3D printing it, and then giving it to her. Oh, well, that's just too expensive. I can't afford that. But she went into a diatribe about how we need to make America great again, how, the country's going to crap, we need to support American businesses, and what did she do? She did not support an American business that hires American labor. I can't say employees because that is technically not true.
But independent contractors.
Independent contractors.
Yes, American independent contractors.
American independent contractors. And Amazon has taught us to just look for cheap.
It's conditioned people.
It is, and if you don't get it in 2 days, good gosh golly, do people get pissed off. People say, well, I can't get this in 2 days. Dude, it's like 3 days before Christmas, okay?
Nobody can get anything
in 2 days.
Even Amazon now.
It's actually been tough.
Yeah, what is interesting though, Chris, when you to answer your question earlier about just kind of like Amazon and customer bases and whatever, it's like most of my work typically ends up being like B2B businesses or businesses that aren't like consumer products. Like I've done work for like wholesale like fruits and vegetables before and things like that, but never something that's so direct as, straight to the consumer. So
change that.
I've worked adjacent and part of businesses that did have that did sell on Amazon. And I remember our marketing, or it was actually our salespeople. I remember our salespeople basically had like 20 hours of their work week were just, managing the Amazon account and making sure that all of our product that we did sell on our website was also being sold on Amazon and everything. And it looked like a lot of work, but they had enough people that they were able to, hire someone to do it and make it their job. So,
and maybe, just maybe, if we can get enough inventors that do believe that Amazon is a worthwhile place for them to move, we can bring on a team of people that will be their job, is to assist people in getting their Amazon business profiles up and running, getting their products sold on Amazon. We've been talking about this for a long time, and it's been something that we've kind of waffled over for a bit and try to figure out the right way to do this. We want to do like a package deal where you pay one price and you get marketing, you get branding, you get product development and 3D engineering, the whole 9.5 yards. But because and Chris, you know this, every single invention, every single person is so different, it's difficult for us to put a number on it without it being incredibly large. Like if we wanted to do you do nothing other than give us all the drawings and art that you have, and we present you with a ready-to-market business, you're looking at no less than $25,000 to $30,000 to do it. And that's if you're nice to me.
And we do have competitors that do that kind of thing, but they are exorbitant.
You look at like the Invent Help style companies, right? And Chris, you're aware of quite a few of them, I'm sure. Yeah. A lot of these are out there to steal your money, give you nothing, and then move on. So, inventors have this paranoia, some of it completely rightfully so. I mean, it's Zuru, not Zorro bunch of balloons. It's Zuru bunches of balloons. But Josh experienced this exact problem where he had a really good idea and it was stolen. And I think that's like one of those things where people say, whoa, that could happen to me. You're right. Yes, it can. It absolutely can. But I will tell you, by and large, It's not going to happen at your product development company. Whether you choose to work with 3D Musketeers, whether you choose to do business with, if you do business with 3D Musketeers for product development, chances are the 4 people you've listened to today will be the 4 people working on your project, which is kind of cool, right? They've gotten to know you, Chris, beyond Mr. Lawyer, Mr. Attorney, Mr. Big Shot. Who do you think you are? A bad song reference.
I remember that one.
I try to make a crappy song reference every episode. It's been a thing now for, this would be episode 2, I guess.
It was
But
Honeycomb. It's the name of the group. Yeah, go ahead.
it's gonna be a thing. But this is a situation where trust is a big deal. If you want a non-disclosure, ask. We have one. We're not going to give it to you free and clear because there are going to be a lot of damn companies out there that copy our relatively expensive non-disclosure agreement and use it for themselves. Instead, if you say, well, I don't have a patent, if you will feel more comfortable with an NDA, please reach out to us. That's what this is all about. We want you to feel comfortable. And truthfully, at the end of the day, that NDA is not worth the paper it's written on, because you, again, need to be able to defend it. These type of patents are going to be very, as the world grows, as we get more people. I mean, God, there's well over 300 million people in the United States alone. If you think your idea is unique, then you need to lock it down now. And that is with a professional. You don't need to spend all this money. And I think Chris has done a great job explaining this to you. You don't need to spend all this money. And if you want to get a real patent, you can go to Chris's website. All the information will be in the description, where you can look at how to do this yourself so that it becomes as painless as possible, or you can at least understand it. So when the time comes and you want to hire someone, hopefully it's Chris, but you will at least be educated so you can know whether or not you're being taken for a ride. Because unless it's on a magic carpet, it's not a ride you want to be on, huh? Another crappy song.
There we go.
There it is.
There we go.
That's
Come on.
it.
You got to do it. But, Chris, I think we're kind of coming up here to kind of a good end. We know we want to have you back on at some point because there's so much legislation going on right now. We have a new presidency that's coming, and no matter what you believe, there is a new presidency coming in. And that's going to change PTAB. It's going to change how the patent office works. Every president does. So what out there can inventors do to help arm themselves with knowledge and power to be successful? What can they do?
Be better aware of the marketplace, and is this just something that you built for yourself because you like it, or is there truly an authentic, legitimate market for that? And that includes being realistic and self-effacing. For some of the companies you're talking about, like a Chrysler or something, one of your vendors there with some of those auto parts.
Yep.
My advice to them is different than my advice to a individual inventor, who I think is probably still a big percentage of our particular audience. For the individual inventor, I would say strive to where the money is. Remember that right now, with interest rates at a record low, there's a ton of venture capital money on the street waiting to be sunk into something. And the two areas I would steer toward that I think have real high viability, even for ones that are only of a slightly above average in merit and innovativeness, is one, COVID-related devices related to sanitation and killing COVID, UVC-C spectrum lighting, modifications to RT-PCR machines. There's going to be a plethora of needs and requirements as we start to get a better grasp on testing. So that would be one area to get educated on. And it's something that any of us can learn. You don't have to have a PhD in molecular biology to understand an RT-PCR machine. That's a common myth. The other is that cannabis is going to make a pretty good comeback. And that we're going to see cannabis now start to be commercially viable again. In 2018 and 2019, they had kind of a pretty uneven ride, and Canopy and a lot of the other big ones that were hoping for some kind of public offering eventually really took a nasty hit. And that's because we can't seem to get a unified strategy among all 50 states on how we want to implement it. But now the momentum is built back up
Oh
again.
yeah.
That it's
Hell,
coming.
Montana legalized.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we've been looking, like a few design people that are friends of mine in the design industry and everything. We're already looking at pitching to potential companies that'll be selling cannabis and also hemp products. It's huge, and
It's huge, but you know what? If we look at Montana, Colorado, and look at the rate of
Oregon.
Oregon.
bankruptcies, well, let me finish. Look at the rate of bankruptcies in those states. Going back to, let's say, 2015, 2016, 2017, the mom and pop who put 70,000, 90,000 of their retirement income into some type of cannabis business, maybe growing, maybe dispensary, maybe modification of the flowers, the rate of bankruptcies was enormous. People got killed, even in the popular states, California, Colorado. And the reason is the regulatory infrastructure turned out to be so contradictory and confusing and not properly structured that even if you did everything right, you couldn't get insurance and your bank shut you down. So the rate of bankruptcies was really high. Now, I'm all happy for Montana implementing it, and I hope you make those sales, Thomas, but you're going to see more bankruptcies. And it's not entirely because anybody did anything wrong, but because the regulatory infrastructure pinched you. You got caught in a pinch and you couldn't get out, and it wasn't your fault. Saw it in California a lot. They would rezone the areas where the dispensaries were located. Suddenly you're in violation of zoning ordinances. Now you have to default on your lease, instant bankruptcy. So the risks are still high, but we're getting more toward a unified cannabis strategy in all the states. That's why I would say I was hoping Grant was going to get a ton of business 3-4 years ago for 3D Musketeers. All the little shelving and units and containers and boxes and certain shaped items that are wonderfully lend themselves to 3D printers. And it did not happen. It did not happen because I was just a little about 6 years ahead of the curve, I think, maybe. And also that the regulatory just made it so hard. Florida's cannabis sales is a nightmare. Minimum $3.75 million investment to get through all the regulatory obstacles. Ohio as well. Only about the upper 10% of the wealth categories in Ohio can even afford to be even considered doing all the paperwork and insurance. But we're changing that. We're making it more egalitarian and available. So I would say invent and strive toward areas of the marketplace where there is clearly liquid cash flowing. One, COVID. Two, cannabis. That's it.
those are your two options right now. Damn it.
But look, everyone that just listened, and if you didn't listen, rewind the damn tape. Just rewind it and listen. You just had
those.
an attorney.
The tape?
The tape.
You just had a patent attorney, someone that has spent decades in this industry, literally hand you what he believes will be the next great things. And you know what? If you are sitting there saying, I want to do something and I just don't know what, start there. Just start there. And if you don't find something, that's okay. Because the cool thing about inventing, you only have to get lucky once. Listen to me. You only have to get lucky once. If you fail 99 times and the 100th time you get it right, you still got it right. And the likelihood of you making enough money when you get it right to survive until the next time you get it right and the next time you get it right is incredibly high. Because once you figure out the right formula, that formula is tough. It's different for every single person. Once you figure out that formula, you have a license to print money. Now, see, we here believe that we 3D print money. Now, of course, that's not legal U.S. tender. It's a crappy joke, but I'm going to roll with it because at the end of the day, everything that comes off of our printers equals money. And it's just fun to say, yeah, we have money printers here. They work in plastic, but unfortunately, they have a very high upfront cost, and their ROI is not as fast as I want. And people, for some reason, don't value them as much as I do, but that's okay. That's okay, you know. But, you know, realistically, guys, and girls, everyone out there listening to us, get off your ass and do something. Stop
And
it.
failure is not the end, because every time you fail, you learn something.
If you are afraid of the ghost of Billy Mays talking about your product in late night television, because I can't say Billy Mays anymore, because if you don't remember Billy Mays, go back and watch the YouTube videos. That
remember
Billy
man
Mays here.
was the king of commercial TV sales. As seen on TV, it was Billy Mays. Now it's Sully.
What's his face with the ShamWow?
Oh, that's Vince Offer.
Oh.
Right? Vince still does that, right? I don't know. Vince Offer got in trouble for punching ladies of the night. We're not going to go there.
This isn't GTA.
No. Look, if you don't want your product to end up on late night television, then just freaking start. That's the best advice that we can give you here, is just get it off the ground. If you spend 6 months of research, of time, of energy, and maybe a little bit of money here and there to find out your idea doesn't work, you have an answer. And you'll never again wonder what if. You'll never again wonder, well, I guess. You'll never have to say, I could have, because you tried. And failure is always an option. But we will say that if you fail and you don't learn something, then you've truly failed. Every failure along this process, like Chris has said, is a learning experience. And every time that you get your ass handed to you because you made a mistake is one more time that you know how to avoid getting your ass handed to you. So try and fail, because very few people get successful their first time. It is unlikely that you will create the next $10 million product. But if you believe you will, you can reach out to us, 3dmusketeers.com. If you are a maker and you believe that you make awesome, because you probably do, you can reach out to us at 3dmusketeers.com/podcast. You can email us at podcast@3dmusketeers.com. And if you are interested in getting a patent, learning more about patents, we want you to reach out to Chris Tanner. Chris, tell them where they can find you again.
youtube.tannerpatent.com.
There you go. And I'm sure you can find all of his contact information right on tannerpatent.com. We'll have all of those links for you in the description down below. We hope that you all have had a wonderful holiday season. We wish you a happy new year. And let's make 2021 a little bit less of a dumpster fire, please. Please.
Can only hope.
Can we not get into fistfights over toilet paper? Please? Please. America, I'm speaking to you specifically. Can we just love each other a little bit more? At a distance, but can we love each other a little bit more? Look, the election's over. Can we go back to not hating our neighbors? That'd be great.
Might be too tall in order.
And remember, guys, if you're listening to this before the new year, call your loved ones. And if you're listening to this after New Year, happy freaking New Year. But still call your loved ones, because you never know when you won't be able to do that again. We hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. We hope that you've enjoyed this. But if nothing else, we hope that you keep making awesome. I'm Grant. I got Tad off to, I guess this would be my left. I've reversed my camera finally. It's now the right way. Thomas is below me, and Chris, you're over at a diagonal from me. Anything else before we call it? No? All right.
Nice.
Take care, everyone. Keep making awesome, and happy 2021.